Good evening, History 393 students. My name is Daniel Joseph Clark, and this is my project on California irrigation. So, to start out, water is a sine qua non for any stable civilization. In other words, it is the sort of indispensable element of any stable civilization. It's needed. Without it, you cannot have a stable civilization. If you look over to my right, you'll see that the key ingredient to a stable civilization is water. The Mesopotamians, the Egyptians, the Chinese, and the Indians, all these massive powers, so to speak, these massive civilizations, were all located next to these massive bodies of water. The Mesopotamians, the Tigris and Euphrates, the Egyptians, the Nile, the Chinese, the Agants, and the Indians, the Ganges, or Ganges. And so it goes without saying that water is, in fact, indispensable. It's essential. And so I want to hammer that point as we sort of segue into the building the infrastructure of California. There was an urge for a surge. A little play on words there. You see the Sacramento and San Joaquin, the Great Central Valley is itself a semi-arid state, with soil baked by the sun to such hardness that it frequently had to be broken with dynamite. For California to become inhabitable and productive in its entirety would require a statewide water system of heroic magnitude. So in other words, California, at least this portion of California that we're talking about, was semi-arid. Arid meaning dry land, predominantly desert. If you think about it, California is predominantly desert. Most of the climate and the landscape is dry and arid. This obviously calls for water. So there was water needed to make the land inhabitable. And it all started with sort of recognizing that need to essentially allow California to become, its own, state, to stand out, essentially to make it livable, survivable, for people to, sort of flock towards California. Water was needed, a statewide water system of heroic magnitude, as the textbook puts it. And so who responded to the call? William Hammond Hall. He was a civil engineer, and in 1878 the legislature passed the Drainage Act, creating the position of a state engineer and appropriating $100,000 for irrigation, drainage, and navigation studies. William Hammond Hall was commissioned, and so what he did was he published a series of studies that sort of laid out a comprehensive plan to build up California's water supply, to establish systems of irrigation, drainage, and even further navigation studies in order to make California an inhabitable land, something to where it wasn't necessarily dominated by the arid landscape, but was able to be, nourished and toiled and livable by Californians. And so these are just a few of Hall's studies: the improvement of the Sacramento River, published in 1880, report on irrigation, 1884, irrigation questions, 86, irrigation development, 86, and irrigation in California, 88. And so I want to sort of hammer home how important these studies were. They sort of established, they were the first sort of response, not response necessarily, what I would say is they were the first, sort of call to action to establish a stable water system. So he sort of got the ball moving getting legislature and even more civil engineers into creating a stable system of water, a steady flow of water for California. Some projects and even some cases that sort of continue to push that ball in the right direction. The Lux versus Haggins. This suit was which pitted land barons Henry Miller and Charles Lux against the Kern County Accounting Land and Water Company regarding riparian rights. The right to draw flowing water upstream from another's property had so exhausted both sides that a compromise was reached in July 1888 between the Kern County Accounting Land and Water Company, 31 water ditch companies. And so essentially there's sort of this tiff over this water, which sort of established property rights for water. And okay, so if this river is on this person's land, do they have the sole right to sort of monopolize that water system, or are others free to traveling along? Are they free to use the water for their needs and such? The Gravity Canal. Now this is a big deal, which was to be built from the Colorado River, a downstream sort of canal. George Chaffee ordered the last head gate to be lifted, and water from the Colorado River flowed into the Salton Sink, now renamed the Imperial Valley. Imperial as an empire for the millions of acres of arable land would soon be reclaimed from the desert. This is important. Pretty big event right here, because what it did was it sort of established California as a place that would not be dominated by the desert. The desert as land, or the arid land. It sort of set California aside as a livable land, a survivable land, a inhabitable land. So pretty big deal. And yeah, so the idea, what I want to say to sort of tie up this presentation is more or less the need for water. It's funny that when you're thinking of these powerhouse sort of empires, what was it that led them to this point? Some might say their industrious successes, their economic successes, their military successes, but really it has to do with their ability to recognize the need for water as a commodity, as something of indispensable nature. This is the source. Water is a source for even all those economic, military, and industrious pursuits. And so that's essentially what I learned as I was reading and sort of pulling together all this information before this project. Thank you.